So tonight, I'm going to return to the series that we did just a little while ago on the gradual training, which is the elaboration of the Noble Eightfold Path, the path to the end of suffering. And I'm going to elaborate on step 7. Step 7 of the Noble Eightfold Path is right mindfulness, samasati. And that's actually our meditation practice. Steps 1 to 6 are what happen in our daily life. And it's our support, all the things that we do to support our meditation practice when we finally get there on step 7. So now for right mindfulness, the Buddha describes 4 different areas where we can focus our mindfulness. And we move through these 4 areas sequentially as our meditation practice deepens. So they just sort of unfold naturally. The first focus of mindfulness is on the body. And the most common way to do this, there's other ways, but the most common way is with the breath, focusing on our breath moving in and out. And if our mind becomes settled, focusing on the breath, then we move into the second area, which is in Pali called Vedana, which can be translated as feeling tone. So it's something more primitive than elaborated feelings like joy or anger or sadness. It's just the immediate sort of feeling tone that you get with any sensory experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So every taste that you taste, there's an immediate pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Every sound you hear, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Everything you see, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So that's what Vedana, or this feeling tone, refers to. And we move into this feeling tone, and the feeling tone that we're going to get as we're doing our meditation practice, as we're focusing on our meditation object, as our mind is stilling, the Vedana we're going to get is a very pleasant, positive feeling. And in the Buddha calls these piti or sukha, joy and happiness. Also translated sometimes as rapture and bliss. So you've got good things to look forward to in your meditation practice. So the energy of these 2 types of feeling tones, as we deepen our practice, they start to calm. Still very beautiful. It's a very beautiful feeling, but just calmer. And then this moves us into the third area where we focus our meditation, and that's on the pure mind. And most of us, before we start meditation, we've never had an experience of the pure mind. Our mind is always filtering sensory experiences. When our eyes see something, that information goes through our mind, through our brain, and then sort of tells us, oh, I'm seeing a room full of people, or I'm seeing Bear Cooney or a lamp or something like that. Or if our ears hear a sound, then that sound wave goes into our brain or our mind and then gives us the information. Oh, I'm hearing somebody speaking, and so on for all the other senses. But as we're focusing on our meditation object, as we're stilling our mind, then we're not paying attention to the sensory world, and it starts to drop away. It starts to shut down. And so in stage 3, or this step 4, third stage, third focus of mindfulness is just experiencing the mind not being obstructed or obscured with any of the sensory experiences that we're used to being bombarded with all day. It's just the pure mind. And a very common way, not 100% of the time, but a very common way that we experience the pure mind is with the impression of light or an image. So it's not something we're seeing with our eyes. It's something that our mind is presenting to us. And it's called a nimitta. Nimitta means sign. And it's just a sign that we're getting very close. Our stillness is getting deep enough that it's going to lead us into the 8th step of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is right samadhi or right stillness, the jhana states. The jhana states where all our senses are shut down. We're just with the pure mind in this very beautiful state of stillness. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is this third focus of mindfulness on the pure mind and the obstructions that can come up and hinder us at this stage of our meditation practice. And in Pali, these obstructions are called Upakkilesas. And so this talk is being taken from the Upakkilesa Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya 128. So Majjhima Nikaya is the middle length sayings of the Buddha, and it's number 128. And to prepare for this talk, I also listened to a talk that Ajahn Brahm gave to his community of monks a few years ago on this topic. So what these obstructions do, so as we're going through these various focuses of mindfulness, we're stilling the mind, having the mind become more and more still. And if one of these obstructions comes up, what it does is it disturbs the stillness. And then it's kind of like going back a little bit backwards in our practice. So this is why we want to let go of these obstructions or these upakkilesas, because we want to maintain our stillness to get into samadhi or jhana. So there's 11 of these. Only the last two, I'm not too sure what the difference is. They sound the same to me. So the first one is doubt. If you're sitting in with your meditation object and things are getting very quiet and very still and very beautiful, and then say a light nimitta appears, and this hasn't happened to you before, like you may think, oh, did somebody turn on a flashlight or turn on the room light, or did some car lights shine in through the window? And so when your mind starts thinking this, thinking like what's going on, and starts thinking all these thoughts and doubting that this is a nimitta, just thinking it's something from the external world, but it's this thinking process that then disturbs your stillness. And then the nimitta, the sign of light will disappear because you've disturbed it. It's based on stillness. And so if you disrupt the stillness, then it goes. So I probably won't repeat this with each of the obstructions, but this is what each of the obstructions do, is they disturb your stillness. And then you've lost the support for this sign. Usually it comes as a light and then it'll disappear. The second obstruction is loss of focus. So your mind is no longer focusing on, if breath is your meditation object, you wander away from it. And it's your focus on your meditation object that creates the stillness. So you've lost your support for the stillness if you lose your focus. The third obstruction is dullness and drowsiness. And so assuming you've had enough sleep, then dullness and drowsiness at this stage, because you're at a fairly advanced stage already, but if it should arise now, it's because there's not enough delight or joy in your meditation practice. Joy is an extremely important part of your practice. And as your stillness starts to develop, then joy or delight also comes along with that. So the antidote to this is to perceive some joy. So just really, focus on the beautiful breath, just how beautiful that subtle breath is feeling, or just the beauty of the stillness that you've cultivated. It's really, just that spaciousness or airiness. It's a very beautiful feeling. So just focus your attention on that so you can allow joy to percolate up. The fourth obstruction is fear. If this is the first time that you've experienced the pure mind, it just, I haven't had this experience, but apparently a lot of people do it. They feel like they're losing some kind of sense of self or a sense of control because something's happening. We put our doer on holiday. We just have our knower present. And so for some people, fear can arise because they feel like they're out of control or they're losing their sense of self. Or it may not be fear. What I have experienced is just surprise. Like if you're just meditating along and then all of a sudden you suddenly get an extremely bright light, then, that can kind of shock you. And then of course that jars your stillness and away it goes. I've only had, most of my lights are very tame. They're not surprise type lights, but once I did have the experience. And what I likened it to was when I was a child and cars were just starting to, well, I guess they've been around for a while, but anyway, I grew up in Vancouver and they were just building gas stations all over the place because now more and more people were owning cars. And I guess left over from the war, they had these huge lights. I think they were for looking at planes up in the sky or something. Anyway, these new gas stations would acquire these big searchlights, whatever they were called. Do you remember this? Anyway, they beam them up in the sky and then you go, oh, there's a new gas station. They're going to have free popping candy. And so you'd get in your car and then you'd follow the search and then you'd find the gas station. Anyway, there were these huge, bright lights. And just once I had a nimitta like that where I was just meditating on my breath and all of a sudden, bang, it was like somebody had one of these right in front of me and turned it on. So my entire field of view all of a sudden had, and so it was just like, whoa. So that was the end of that. I killed that. So it can be fear or it can just be surprise. And the antidote to this is just to have repeat experiences and then you get used to it and then it won't be shocking like that. The next one can be excitement. Like if you have your first nimitta, your first lights, you go, oh wow, a nimitta! Bang, kill your stillness. So it'll disappear. So just try and keep your equanimity going. The next one is called stiffness of the mind. It's an inability to respond to what needs to be done or a lack of adaptability. And when I was listening to Ajahn Brahm talking about this one, he didn't elaborate on it. So what was coming to my mind, so this is just possibilities because I haven't heard it from the teacher, is maybe wandering thoughts come up and your mind just follows them and doesn't have the adaptability to let it go and come back to your meditation object, maybe. Or maybe you're holding your attention on your meditation object with tension. And then you get rigid because you've got tension. And then that's going to prevent you to let go into stillness. So remember, we want to be with our meditation object in a very relaxed, comfortable state, just letting it come to us, not having any tension. The seventh obstruction is excessive energy. And the Buddha's analogy to this, he said, if you catch a quail and you hold it too tightly, you'll squeeze the poor thing to death. So you don't want to hold it too tightly. So he said, this is like holding your nimitta, like a nimitta light comes up and it's like you run over your mind and grab onto it. And then again, that's just disturbing your stillness and it'll go. He said, often your nimitta will appear in what appears to be your sort of peripheral vision. And again, it's not vision, it's all in the mind, but it's in your sort of field of awareness. It's off to the side. And your mind sort of goes there and it's wanting to drag it into your central vision. And that's just using too much energy. You just stay with your meditation object until it moves into central vision and becomes dominant thing in your awareness. So the next one, number 8, the 8th obstruction is the opposite, deficiency of energy. And so this is holding the quail too loosely so it can just fly out of your hand. So this will be insufficient attention to your meditation object, so you don't have the support for stillness to develop. Number 9 is longing. I want a nimitta. So that's desire. And desire is a hindrance, and hindrances kill your stillness. So you just need to go in, just be with your breath. Let go of any longing. Number 10 is perception of diversity. So sometimes these nimittas can come up and they're quite, instead of just being a light, they're a complex image. A long time ago, I used to get Buddha rupas. They just pop. It would be like just an image of the Buddha, a little statue. It would just pop. Once I had a mandala, which is a lime green mandala. Weird color for a mandala, but they're quite complex. I've talked to a few people who get scenery, like they just see a scenery. So, and that's just too much diversity. We're trying to unify our mind, bring it to stillness, bring it to unification. And if you're attending to an image that's just got all different kinds of aspects to it, that's again pulling you out of your stillness. So you want to either just stay with your meditation object until things simplify, until the nimitta simplifies, or pick something very simple in that scene. And I got this vague memory, so I can't remember if this was Ajahn Brahm or who it was, but I've got this memory of somebody talking about this nimitta that was like a scene. And then what they did was they went to a tree in the scene, and then they went to a leaf on that tree, and then they went to a dewdrop on that leaf. So that was coming from this perception of diversity with this major scene and going right down to just one dewdrop. So that's very simple. So I think that was effective for that person. And then the last one is excessive focus on form. So I'm going to have to find another person to talk to us about this, because I am not too sure how that differs from number 10. It just seems the same to me. I mean, there must be a difference because the Buddha taught them as 2 different things, but I can't convey to you what the difference is. So the Buddha in the sutta, he says that if these obstructions arise, and this is what you would be doing after your meditation practice, is ask yourself, why did this particular obstruction come up? And then make a plan to prevent its return the next time that you sit down to meditate. Okay, so I just wanted to pass on those things so that while we're in retreat, if you get to the stage where you're experiencing these nimittas, you have an idea of how to work with them. So the basic instruction with nimittas is that you stay with your meditation object until the nimitta becomes very still, very bright. And then you can switch your attention to it from your meditation object. Okay. And open up for questions or comments, discussion.
Sanghamitta, could you repeat the last one, please?
Yeah. The last one is,
Expected?
no, excessive.
Oh,
Excessive focus on forms. So, as I said, the nimitta can be light or like an image, like image of forms. And so you don't want to be focusing on these forms because they're just too diverse. But I'm just not clear how that differs from perception of diversity.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
I've heard of a sort of like a light nimitta that's very subtle, just like a subtle shift in like almost tone of like the field of awareness, like so subtle that you barely even notice it's a nimitta,
Yeah.
but it's that. So I'm curious like how if that is starting to be noticed, but there's no sort of like, I hear Ajahn Brahm talks about sort of being in the center of it, you know, like if.
Yeah, I think you would have to have it less subtle. So it's more when you have, like say you have a circle of light. You don't want to be on the edges because then that's showing diversity of in the light, out of the light. So he says, come into the center, but that's when you've got something that's sort of taking up, you know, your field of experience and you can be in the middle. If it's something super subtle, just stay with your breath, stay with your meditation object.
Just wait.
Yeah, wait and allow it to grow because it's going to grow from your mindfulness on your meditation object. Yes. Yes.
I don't worry too much about what is or is not happening when I meditate. And you know, sometimes maybe I get like kind of lava lamp type
Yes.
shapes, things like
Yeah.
that. So how do you know what it is or isn't? Because I've never actually cared because I didn't know about it. So
Yeah,
I don't.
right. So lava lamp is very common, but you absolutely don't want to focus on it because it's moving. Like it's just these globs of light that are different colors moving up and down. And that's way too much diversity. And I mean, it's a sign that your meditation practice is, you are stilling, so that's good. Be encouraged by that, but just ignore it and stay with your breath or stay with your meditation object. You don't want to switch to the nimitta until it's very stable, not moving and quite like pulling your attention because it's quite bright.
Brightness, non-born stability.
Okay, stability.
So lights that aren't moving.
Yeah, ignore the lights that are moving. Yeah, I can't remember if it was in Ajahn Mun's biography. He said he wasted a lot of time looking at lights, moving lights.
What about the sensations might be the previous step of just feeling like really gooey or light? Like, is that something of diversity or is that something positive?
Yeah, it's a sign that things are quieting. It's just very common to feel very light. You can feel like you're floating or expanding. So, yeah, stay with your meditation object. That's just common experience, bodily experiences as your meditation is, it's going in the right direction.
Beth Upton makes it great. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
It's a very basic question, but if you start feeling any like physical discomfort or pain in your body, should you ignore that or should you?
No, you should make your body comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely take care. Like, first of all, as you're sitting down to meditate, you do your best to support your body to be as comfortable as possible.
Okay.
And then if pain arises while you're meditating, then, I mean, if it's just a little tickle or something, you can maybe ignore it, but if there is bodily discomfort, I mean, we're wanting to focus on our mind, and if our body's uncomfortable, it's just gonna pull our mind there.
Yeah.
Plus, we could harm our body. I've heard of lots of monks who have destroyed knees from sitting in the, cross-legged position too much when they were in pain. So
Yeah.
definitely take care of your body.
Okay.
Jocelyn, for your question, Beth Upton has a really metaphor that I find really instructive. All of these, there's some piti and sukha in that, ease and pleasant, and many different kinds of sensations. And it can be, it's very interesting, and sometimes it's more interesting than the breath. And, okay, if the mind goes there, but ideally, like when you start to understand this process of meditation and what's happening, that's very helpful. And that's what I think this metaphor does. These sensations are happening because of the quality of your attention with your meditation object. And so when you withdraw that attention from your meditation object and put it on some of the cool things that are happening, the whole thing's just going to grind to a halt. That's what happens. So her metaphor is great. It's like you want to laugh, right? So you go to a comedy club and yay, it's a decent comic, and so you're paying attention to the comic and then you start laughing, which is like those pleasant feelings in the body or the lava lamps. And you don't want to switch the attention from the comic, like, wow, look, awesome, I'm laughing. And this is what we do in our meditation, And then once you understand that, oh, these things are happening because of this beautiful, purifying, deepening attention with the meditation object, then that helps you to just stay with the meditation object. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I get like really excited that I'm joyful. And then I'm like, oh, yeah,
And then it's gone.
yeah,
Yeah, it all falls apart
yeah.
because it's all happening because of the attention on the meditation object.
Well, that was number 5, excitement.
And invariably this will happen, we all have certain tendencies when something new, the very first time happens in the meditation. So, you don't, like, no big deal, because you're gonna go there again. And that is how the excitement calms down, that is how, you're learning this skill. The next time, then you'll be able to pay less attention to it and stay with the meditation object better.
My question is, how repeatable are the phases that are identified by the Buddha? And I'm thinking of the 4 jhanas and all of the other steps that lead up to the jhanas. And the reason for my question is people are pretty diverse, there's even when you look around the room, there's people here with different energy levels and different temperaments. And so is it fair to say we're all gonna kind of experience the progression quite differently, or like, does the cookbook work for everybody? That's what I'm really asking.
Yeah, well, this is how the Buddha teaches it. So my belief is the cookbook works for everybody, but how you perceive different things, that can vary tremendously, so like nimittas can be, the perception of them can be very diverse depending on the individual. But I believe the cookbook holds. And
But-
they're very repeatable. I mean, that's been my experience. They've been repeatable. And remember, at this stage, we're not quite in the jhanas, right? This is the step before the jhanas. Now, these are the obstructions, the final subtle obstructions. We've had tons of obstructions beforehand, and we've settled those down, and now we're into these subtle obstructions right before we go into the jhanas.
But it's very much not one size fits all. You know, there are different meditation objects, and so the cookbook has some diversity in it as well, because the Buddha knows we're very different. And that's where it's wonderful if you have a skilled teacher.
Do you think, oh,
Go ahead, John.
sorry. Do you think that's largely influenced by your karma? Of your ability to get through the cookbook sooner than some others?
Yeah, probably, I mean, and past life experiences.
Yeah, Beth says if you're slow in this lifetime, you'll be faster next.
Very encouraging. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the lifetime after that.
Even faster. You're building your skill set.
And you see that, and you see people come to the Dhamma much younger, you know, yeah. We watched a wonderful documentary on nun Jetsunna Tenzin Palmo, and she's Tibetan nun, a woman from Britain. She's now 80. And this documentary is on YouTube. It's called Cave in the Snow. It's very beautiful. She spent 12 years in a cave in Himalayas, doing deep solo retreat. But yeah, she read a book on Buddhism at 18 and started crying, you know, like, and turned to her mom's like, oh, I'm a Buddhist, like that, you know. Yeah, so yeah, this very much is people's karma. Yeah. And that's where we want to just be putting in as much great causes and conditions, you know, for our
Ourselves.
other, you know, our later, whatever. Julie, you had a question.
What is the balance between striving and acceptance in meditation? Because it's, you know, obvious if I'm sitting there going 99 bottles of beer on the wall, like that's not effective. So I should be working harder than that, right? But at the same time, I believe one of the ones you mentioned was like, you know, like you don't want to have that happen either. I had never really thought much about it, and I think at the retreat it had been mentioned, kind of acceptance and be okay with what happens. Is that correct? And then made me laugh because then I went and talked to one of you, and you told me I was getting it wrong, and I'm like, okay, so which is it? So what's the balance between striving and acceptance?
Great question.
You're looking at me, okay. So, yeah, we definitely want to have an adhitthana, like a determination. But then, just because you sit down and we want to have a peaceful meditation, that may not happen. So that's the acceptance part. So you're going to put in the causes and conditions, like carve out a period of time in the day, you know, in a quiet place to sit down and focus on your meditation object. But then what arises, who knows? That's the part you need to accept. But I'm almost afraid to use the word striving, because we want to be very relaxed. Like, I like the analogy of being on the beach, and it's just like we hear the waves going in and out, and we're not controlling, and we feel the breath coming in and out, and we're not controlling it. So it's that kind of relaxed awareness of our meditation object. But when our mind wanders and we're planning the dinner menu or something, then we want to have that bit of effort there, go, oh, and bring our mind back to our meditation object. So that's where there's a bit of efforting, like when we notice we've wandered away, then we're going to gently bring ourselves back. But it's not like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why can't you meditate? Get back here on your breath. It's just, oh, I've wandered and back. It's just a very gentle, non-judgmental accepting that you wandered, but now you're gently redirecting yourself back to your meditation object. So, and then just accepting, like one of the things, I had an interview recently with our teacher, Beth Upton, and, you know, having to deal with a very, very subtle breath, like often it's not even there, you know, and so I'm just, you know, spaciousness or whatever. And so my mind was just wandering like crazy because there was, you know, there wasn't anything really strong to grab it. And so I asked her, should I, you know, find a different meditation object that, you know, was stronger? And she went, no. You just have to accept that as your meditation object gets more subtle, that it is going to be harder. So here's an acceptance thing. I have to accept that it's harder to stay with your meditation object when it's very, very fine, very, very subtle. So there's an acceptance, but I'm still making that bit of effort that every time it does wander to bring it back.
All right.
And you're bringing up the spiritual practice is full of paradox. And there's also a need for balance, every aspect of practice. And so you're pointing to the balance that we need to work towards and come to understand in our own mind-body system, between some sense of spiritual urgency and lots and lots of contentment. And when there's too much spiritual urgency and there's too much striving and efforting, the system gets tight and clogged.
Right.
And when there's too much contentment, when it's not balanced, and it's just like, you know, that's the, you know, 99 bottles of beer, like, then you're going nowhere, you know. So yeah.
Right, and then to incorporate Scott's question about personality, I am never relaxed.
Right, so
And so for me, it would be better to go down that
Absolutely.
road, which
And-
is what I'm doing.
yeah,
So,
and for the most part, I hear Beth Upton directing people that way all the time. That, yeah, basically, I think she's ready to say 100% of the Westerners that she teaches. She's needing to encourage the contentment side and the relaxed side. And even for herself, when she was at Pa'ok, early days, one of the most significant first instructions she got was to put in half the effort that she was. Just cut your effort in half. And she was terrified to do that, you know, like, well, then nothing's gonna happen, you know, I've got it, you know. And but she trusted the whole thing and did that. And about soon after, I don't know, maybe a month or two, she got the same instruction. Okay, now half again. Reduce it again by. Yeah. Yeah, so you're right. Relax. Yeah.
And maybe like a coarser meditation object than the breath or something is helpful for that. To keep your attention, if it was like beads, for example, like when you had COVID.
Yeah, when I had COVID, then Beth, and I had zero focus when I had the COVID. Then Beth, I told her I was, using, where are the mallow beads? Mallow beads. Anyway, I was doing the mallow beads and also doing the hand, the hand thing. And she endorsed that because of that particular situation. But now my situation is different. My focus is good, but it starts to fall off when I sort of lose awareness of the breath because it gets so subtle. But she's saying, hang in there, don't make it coarser. Hang in there, just accept that it's harder.
Right.
We're almost at time. Anything else? Yes.
I knew all that while going into the password for 10 days.
Say that again. I
It's
do.
really interesting to hear all this. It would have been nice to know before I had gone into it to pass.
Oh,
Yeah, really.
well, you've got it.
Know now.
Got it now. Okay. So we'll end with karuna and compassion. So first of all, bring to mind somebody you know with great physical and mental suffering. And while being aware of their particular difficulties, direct these compassionate phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now send the phrases to yourself. May I be free of pain and sorrow. May I find peace. Now bring to mind somebody who's been very supportive to you and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. Now bring to mind a neutral person, someone you don't have strong feelings of love or hate towards, and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now bring to mind somebody you have a difficult relationship with, and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you too find peace. May all beings be free of pain and sorrow. May all beings find peace. Remember that all beings face great potential suffering, no matter how fortunate their immediate circumstances may be. This meditation does not eliminate suffering. What we are doing is being able to acknowledge suffering, to open to it and respond to it with a tenderness of heart, which allows us to join with all beings and realize we are never alone. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. And events, please, Claire. You know. And just before you go, I'm just going to end the recording.